Hi, Neil Lazarus here, and welcome to another podcast. I wanted to bring you up to date with what's happening, and as you probably saw, the United Nations was a place of high tension and high drama yesterday. The United States, in one sentence, abstained from the United Nations ceasefire resolution amidst the Gaza crisis. That's the headline, if you like. Bottom line, in a high-stakes diplomatic maneuver, the United States has refrained from wielding its veto power within the United Nations Security Council on the question of Gaza. Up until then, Israel had been protected by the United States, who had vetoed any move to pass a resolution calling for a ceasefire. The UNSC, the United Nations Security Council, had 14 affirmative votes and an abstention from the United States. The resolution calls resoundingly for, quote, demands an immediate ceasefire for the month of Ramadan, recognised by all parties, leading to a long-term sustainable truce. This call is becoming more and more urgent as Israel prepares, perhaps, for an invasion of Rafah. By the way, the resolution didn't stop there, and it carried on. Let me read you some more. It says, it, quote, emphasised the urgent necessity to enhance the flow of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Now, that's a problem also for Israel, because much of that humanitarian aid is ending up in the hands of Hamas. It says the protection of civilians caught in the crossfire is paramount. The UNSC reiterates its unwavering stance, quote, to remove all restrictions to the provision of humanitarian aid on a large scale, unquote. Now, the UN abstention is important. The United States chose not to wield its veto power, a tool which had, like I mentioned, historically brandished used and brandished in the past. Instead, the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, delivered a carefully worded statement. I don't know if you saw it, but it was very interesting. She said, quote, certain crucial modifications were ignored. In other words, the United States wasn't totally happy with what was passed, including the desire to explicitly condemn Hamas. That's important. In other words, this motion didn't condemn Hamas for October the 7th. The US delegation couldn't fully endorse the resolution, and that's why she said they were abstaining. The ambassador of the United States said, any truce must include the release of all captives. That's important as well. By the way, if Israel was a little bit more savvy in its public relations, that element would be being stressed continually. Netanyahu reacted, and his government is increasingly finding itself under crisis, also at home over a totally different issue, that of the conscription or non-conscription of the ultra-Orthodox. We'll do another podcast on that another time. But the office of Benjamin Netanyahu said that the United States abstention, quote, deviates sharply from the consistent US state stance in the Security Council since the war's inception. What was the problem? Israel perceives that Hamas might, and by the way, Hamas welcomed this vote, see this as some form of chink in the armour of Israel, a chance to pressure Israel into a ceasefire without securing the release of any hostages. Clearly, the stakes can be higher. What was also, I think, interesting was that two delegations which were meant to go to the States, including that of Minister Dermer's of the Strategic Affairs Committee, was abruptly cancelled. The message was clear. Israel remains resolute in its pursuit of both military victory and the safe return of its captives. The United Nations continues to be the centre of world debate over the future of Gaza. The United States is beginning to put pressure on Israel. It is not happy, as you know, regarding any ground campaign in Rafah. And we've seen openly criticism of Israeli policy regarding any ground invasion there. The problem may be that Israel can't win the war against Hamas without such an invasion. All of this is a major diplomatic chess game, if you like, and the Security Council's voice is important, but at the end of the day, it can't force Israel into a ceasefire because it's non-binding. On the other hand, it is another step up the ladder of increased diplomatic pressure on Israel to bring the war to an end. The question is whether that will work and whether that end would come without the return of the hostages.